In the harsh Nebraska territory of 1864, Catherine Mills was sent to a widower as a cruel joke, a barren woman for a man who'd already buried one wife and child, with no expectations except failure. But when she returned to face her mockers, she carried something that should have been impossible: a baby in her arms and a love story that would challenge everything the frontier town believed about miracles. What secret lay behind the child that transformed the barren bride into the mother she was never supposed to be? Dust swirled through the windows of Meadowbrook's general store as Catherine Mills scrubbed the wooden counter for the third time that morning. The autumn wind of 1864 whistled between the loose boards, carrying whispers from the women gathered near the pickle barrels. Their voices dropped to hushed tones whenever she walked past. "Poor thing doesn't even know yet," Mrs. Patterson murmured to her friend. "Been married 3 years to that farmer's boy, and still flat as a board." Catherine's hands froze on the rag. She had heard those words before, felt their sting in the doctor's office, in the church pews, in every pitying glance from married women with babies on their hips. Her marriage to Thomas Mills had ended when he died of fever 2 years back, leaving her childless and dependent on relatives who viewed her as a burden. "Catherine, dear," her aunt's voice cut through the store like a knife through butter. "Come here, we have wonderful news." The word wonderful sounded wrong coming from Aunt Martha's mouth. It twisted and curled like smoke from a dying fire. Catherine set down her cleaning rag and walked slowly toward the group of women. Their faces wore matching smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Reverend Walsh has found you a husband," Aunt Martha announced. "A widower up in Millfield. His name is Daniel Cooper, and he lost his wife last spring during childbirth." The store fell silent except for the creaking of old wood. Catherine felt her stomach drop like a stone into a deep well. She knew what this meant. Everyone in Meadowbrook knew what this meant. "They think it's perfect, Mrs. Patterson added with false sweetness. "A woman who can't have babies matched with a man who's already buried his only child. No one will be disappointed when nothing happens." The words hit Catherine like slaps across her face. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear into the prairie wind. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked each woman in the eye. "When do I leave?" she asked quietly. "Tomorrow morning," Aunt Martha replied. "The supply wagon heads north at dawn. Pack light, dear. Frontier life doesn't need much." That night, Catherine sat on her narrow bed, folding her few dresses into a worn leather bag. Her mother's quilt lay across her lap, the only beautiful thing she owned. Outside her window, the Nebraska stars shone cold and bright. Tomorrow, she would leave everything she had ever known for a man who expected nothing from her. Maybe that was better than staying where everyone expected her to fail. The supply wagon bounced and creaked along the rutted trail as morning sun painted the Nebraska grassland gold. Catherine gripped the wooden seat, her knuckles white from holding on. The driver, a gruff man named Pete, hadn't spoken much since they left Meadowbrook at sunrise. "How much further?" Catherine asked, her voice barely loud enough to hear over the rattling wheels. "About an hour," Pete replied. "You sure about this arrangement, miss? Cooper's been alone since spring. Might be set in his ways." Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. What if Daniel Cooper took one look at her and sent her back? What if he had changed his mind? What if this whole thing was just another cruel joke? The wagon topped a small hill, and there it was, a log cabin sitting alone in a valley, with smoke rising from the chimney. A few chickens pecked in the dirt yard, and a vegetable garden stretched along one side of the house. It looked lonely but peaceful, like a place where someone might start over. Pete pulled the wagon to a stop near the front door. "This is it," he said, jumping down to help Catherine with her bag. "Good luck, miss." Before Catherine could thank him, the cabin door opened. A tall man stepped out, and Catherine's breath caught in her throat. Daniel Cooper wasn't what she had expected. His brown hair was touched with gray, but his blue eyes were kind. His clothes were clean but worn, and his hands looked strong from working the land. "You must be Catherine," he said, walking toward the wagon. His voice was gentle, not harsh like she had feared. "Yes, sir," she whispered, climbing down from the wagon seat. Her legs felt shaky, and her mouth was dry as dust. Pete tipped his hat and drove away, leaving Catherine and Daniel standing in the yard, staring at each other. The silence stretched between them like a rope pulled tight. "I'm sorry about your wife," Catherine said suddenly. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Daniel's face changed, softening somehow. "Thank you," That means more than you know. He picked up her bag and walked toward the cabin. It's not much. I haven't been keeping house very well since Mary passed. Catherine stepped inside and saw immediately what he meant. The cabin was dark and dusty, with cobwebs in the corners and dishes stacked on the table. Clothes lay scattered on the floor, and the windows were so grimy they barely let in light. But Catherine didn't see just the mess. She saw the possibility. She saw a place that needed care, needed love, needed someone to make it home again. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the windows. Daniel nodded, and Catherine pulled out a clean cloth. She walked to the nearest window and began rubbing away the grime. As the glass cleared, golden light poured into the room, and everything changed. The cabin wasn't just neglected, it was waiting. Daniel watched her work, something like wonder crossing his face. "You don't have to." "I want to," Catherine said firmly. For the first time in years, she meant it. Catherine's fingers worked magic in the black Nebraska soil, coaxing green shoots from earth that had refused to grow much for Daniel in 2 long years. The autumn sun of 1864 warmed her back as she knelt between rows of late carrots and hardy greens that somehow flourished under her gentle care. "How do you do it?" Daniel asked, dropping to his knees beside her. His voice held wonder, like a child discovering snow for the first time. She brushed dirt from a perfectly formed carrot, its orange skin gleaming in the afternoon light. "My grandmother taught me secrets about growing things. She said plants are like people. They need the right conditions and someone who believes in them." Daniel watched her hands move through the soil with practiced grace. These weren't the soft hands of a town woman, but strong fingers that knew hard work and didn't fear getting dirty. "What else did your grandmother tell you?" Catherine looked up, her gray eyes sparkling with memories. "She said the most beautiful flowers sometimes bloom in places where nobody expects them to grow, in cracks between rocks, in fields everyone said were too poor for planting." Something warm stirred in Daniel's chest, a feeling he'd buried with his wife 6 months ago. Catherine had that same gentle strength, thriving where others saw only hardship. "Catherine," he said softly, reaching out to brush a smudge of earth from her cheek, "I want you to know something important. What those people back in Meadowbrook said about you, about why they sent you here, none of that matters to me." Her breath caught in her throat. "But Daniel, you don't understand. I can't give you children. The doctor said I never could. A wife should be able to." "You've already given me something I thought was lost forever," he interrupted, his voice rough with feeling. "You've given me hope. You've brought life back to this place. To me." That evening, they sat by the fire Catherine had built in the stone fireplace, sharing stories of their childhoods while autumn wind whispered through the cabin walls. She told him about helping her grandmother in the herb garden, about the plants that healed and the ones that helped things grow. He shared memories of building this cabin with his own hands, of dreams he'd had for filling it with family and laughter. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Daniel admitted, watching firelight dance across her face. "When Mary died, I thought my heart died too." Catherine reached across the space between their chairs, her hand finding his. "Maybe hearts don't die. Maybe they just go to sleep until the right person wakes them up." As winter approached and their quiet happiness grew, neither could have imagined the storm that would soon test everything they had built together. Shattering glass exploded through the pre-dawn darkness, jerking Catherine from peaceful sleep into a nightmare of splintering wood and shouting voices. It was December 15th, 1864, and winter had brought more than just snow to their isolated valley. "Get down. Stay away from the windows." Daniel's urgent whisper cut through her confusion as he rolled from their bed, rifle already in his hands. 3 shadowy figures moved outside their cabin like wolves circling prey. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed herself flat against the wooden floor. The outlaws had come at the coldest, darkest hour, when most folks slept deepest and fought slowest. "We know you got supplies in there, Cooper," bellowed a rough voice from the yard. "Winter's been hard, and we're taking what we need." Daniel's jaw clenched. He'd heard stories of these men, drifters who robbed isolated homesteads, taking whatever they wanted. His finger found the trigger as he peered through a gap in the shutters. The cabin door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. A bearded man charged through, pistol raised, his eyes wild with desperation and cold. Daniel's rifle boomed in response, and the intruder stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. "Frank's hit!" someone yelled from outside. "Just grab what you can and go." Catherine watched in terror as the wounded man lunged toward their food stores. Without thinking, she grabbed the cast-iron skillet from beside the fireplace and swung it with all her strength. The man crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Daniel's second shot rang out, driving off the remaining bandits who decided their injured companion wasn't worth dying for. As dawn broke over the snow-covered prairie, the danger passed, leaving behind only broken glass and the knowledge that they had survived by working together. "You were so brave," Daniel murmured, pulling Catherine close against his chest. She could feel his heart racing beneath her cheek, could smell the gunpowder smoke clinging to his shirt. "I wasn't brave," Catherine whispered. "I was terrified. But this is our home, and nobody has the right to take it from us." As they cleaned up the damage and boarded the broken window, Catherine felt something fundamental shift inside her. She wasn't just Daniel's wife anymore. She was a partner in building something worth fighting for. The baby's cries split the winter silence like thunder across the frozen Nebraska plains. Catherine rushed to the cabin door, her breath forming white clouds in the bitter cold of February 1865. A young woman stood on her doorstep, swaying dangerously, clutching a tiny bundle wrapped in torn blue cloth. "Help me," the stranger whispered, her lips blue from the cold. "Please, I can't go any further." Catherine caught the girl as her legs gave out. The bundle in her arms moved, and Catherine's heart stopped. Inside the ragged blanket was a baby, no bigger than a loaf of bread, with perfect tiny fingers and dark hair. "Daniel!" Catherine called, her voice sharp with urgency. Her husband appeared from the barn, his face changing when he saw what Catherine held. The young woman, barely more than a child herself, had fever burning in her cheeks. "My name is Mary," the girl managed to say as Catherine helped her to the warm cabin. "Mary Henderson, my husband. He died of fever last month. Been walking for weeks, trying to reach my sister in Colorado." Catherine's hands shook as she felt Mary's burning forehead. This was a dangerous fever, the kind that took people away forever. She'd seen it before, watched good people fade like candles in the wind. "The baby," Mary whispered, her eyes finding Catherine's face. "His name is James. He's all I got left." "Don't talk like that," Catherine said firmly, though her heart was breaking. "You're going to be fine, both of you." Daniel brought blankets while Catherine made tea from willow bark, the way her grandmother had taught her. But Mary's breathing grew labored, and her fever climbed higher. "Mrs. Cooper," Mary grabbed Catherine's hand with surprising strength. "I heard about you in town. Heard you were kind. Heard you understood about wanting babies but not being able to have them." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. Even dying strangers knew her shame. "If something happens to me," Mary continued, could you care for James? I can see it in your eyes. You got room in your heart for him." Catherine looked at the baby sleeping in the wooden box Daniel had lined with soft cloth. James had stopped crying when she held him, like he knew he was safe. Her arms felt right with him in them, like they'd been empty her whole life waiting for this moment. "You're going to get better," Catherine insisted. But Mary's eyes were already growing distant. "Promise me," she whispered. "I promise," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face. Mary smiled then, peaceful as sunset. "Good. That's real good." By morning, Mary Henderson was gone, but baby James remained, changing everything Catherine thought she knew about her life. Spring mud sucked at the horses' hooves as 3 riders approached the Cooper cabin on a gray April morning. Catherine was hanging wet clothes on the line when she spotted them, her heart sinking like a stone in deep water. She recognized the lead rider immediately, Uncle Joshua from Meadowbrook, the man who'd helped arrange her marriage like she was unwanted furniture. "Catherine Cooper." His voice boomed across the yard, using her married name like it was something distasteful. "Heard some mighty interesting stories about you." The second man wore a tin star on his chest, Sheriff Morrison from the county seat. The third was a stranger in expensive clothes, who sat his horse like he owned everything he saw. Daniel stepped out of the barn with baby James in his arms, now 4 months old and thriving. The baby was fat and happy, with curls that caught the morning light and bright eyes that took in everything around him. "Well, I'll be," Uncle Joshua said, his voice dripping with false amazement. "Look what we have here. The barren woman with a baby. Ain't that something miraculous, Sheriff? Sheriff Morrison dismounted, his weathered face neutral but watchful. Ma'am, sir, we need to ask some questions about where this child came from. Catherine's throat felt dry as old leather. She'd known this day might come, had seen it in her nightmares. He's our son. We're raising him proper. Uncle Joshua laughed harshly. Your son? Catherine, everyone from here to Kansas City knows you can't have babies. Been to every doctor. Tried every remedy. The cruel words stung, but Catherine lifted her chin. James is still my boy. The well-dressed stranger finally spoke. My name is Robert Henderson. That baby belongs to me. His voice was smooth but cold. My wife Mary ran away with him last winter. We've been searching ever since. Catherine felt the world shift beneath her feet. This wasn't the loving father of Mary's stories. This was something else entirely. As James looked up at the stranger, he began to cry. Not his normal fussy cry, but the frightened wail of a child who sensed danger. Mary never mentioned you, Catherine said carefully. Henderson's smile was sharp as a blade. Mary was confused. The childbirth affected her mind. She ran off in a fever dream. Taking my son. I've come to bring him home where he belongs. But something in his eyes, something in the way he looked at baby James like a piece of property rather than a child, told Catherine everything she needed to know. This was what Mary had been running from. Sheriff Morrison pulled out an official-looking document. I have a court order here, signed by a judge in Kansas. Mr. Henderson has legal claim to the child. Catherine's legs nearly gave out, but Daniel moved to stand beside her, his presence steady and strong. Sheriff, that baby's mother died in our care. She asked us to raise him. The woman who died wasn't his legal mother, Henderson said smoothly. She was an unstable girl who stole my child during one of her episodes. I have the marriage certificate right here. He produced another paper with Mary's name on it, but Catherine noticed something that made her blood run cold. The signature didn't match the way Mary had signed her name in the Bible when Catherine had recorded her death. That's not her handwriting, Catherine said suddenly. Henderson's face darkened. Are you calling me a liar? Before Catherine could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. Father Miguel from the mission rode into the yard, his face grim with purpose. Sheriff Morrison, the priest called out, I'm glad I caught you here. I've been riding hard since dawn with information about this case. He dismounted and pulled out a well-worn book. This is the mission's record of marriages and deaths. I've been going through it since you visited last week. Henderson stepped forward aggressively. Whatever you think you found, priest, it doesn't matter. I have legal papers. Do you? Father Miguel looked directly at him. Because according to my records, Mary Henderson was never married to anyone named Robert. She was, however, running from a man who had been holding her against her will. He opened the book and read aloud. Mary Henderson, aged 16, arrived at the mission in December seeking sanctuary. She bore signs of mistreatment and was terrified of being found. She had recently given birth and begged us to help her escape with her child. The color drained from Henderson's face. That's not possible. She told me the whole story before she died. Father Miguel continued. How you bought her from her father's debts. How you kept her locked up. How she escaped when she realized you planned to sell the baby to pay for more acquisitions. Sheriff Morrison's hand moved to his weapon. Mr. Henderson, I think you'd better explain yourself. But Henderson was already backing toward his horse. This is all lies. That baby is mine. No, Catherine said, stepping forward with James in her arms. This baby belongs to a mother who died protecting him, and now he belongs to the family she chose for him. Henderson made one last desperate grab for James, but Daniel was faster. His fist connected with Henderson's jaw, sending the man sprawling in the mud. Sheriff, Father Miguel said quietly, I believe you'll find there are warrants out for Mr. Henderson in 3 territories, trafficking in women and children. As Sheriff Morrison placed Henderson in chains, the man's facade finally crumbled. You don't understand, he snarled. These people have no right. She's barren. She can't even have children. Maybe not, Catherine replied, holding James close. But I can love them, and sometimes that's more important than making them. The dusty street of Meadowbrook looked smaller than Catherine remembered as she and Daniel rode into town 6 months later, James riding happily on his mother's lap. Word of their story had spread across the territory. How the barren bride had become a mother through love rather than birth. How she and her husband had stood against those who would tear their family apart. Mrs. Patterson and the other church ladies gathered outside the general store, their faces uncertain as the Cooper family approached. Catherine climbed down from the wagon, James babbling contentedly in her arms, and walked straight toward the group that had once scorned her. "Catherine," Mrs. Patterson said hesitantly, "we heard. That is, people are saying that I found my miracle after all?" Catherine finished gently. "Yes, I did. Just not the way anyone expected." She looked around at the faces that had once judged her so harshly. "James may not have come from my body, but he came from my heart. His mother chose me to be his family when she couldn't be. That makes him mine in every way that matters." Aunt Martha pushed forward, her face a mixture of shame and stubborn pride. "But Catherine, people are talking. They're saying we were wrong about you, and—" "You were wrong about me," Catherine said simply. "You measured my worth by something I couldn't control instead of by who I chose to be. But I forgive you, because holding on to anger would hurt James more than it would hurt you." Young Dr. Adams, who had replaced the old doctor, stepped forward with genuine curiosity. "Mrs. Cooper, I've been following your case with great interest. The medical journals are full of theories about barrenness, but perhaps we've been thinking about motherhood too narrowly." Daniel appeared at Catherine's side, his hand finding hers. "My wife has taught me that families aren't just made by blood," he said. "They're made by choice, by love, by the willingness to sacrifice for each other." As they walked through town, Catherine noticed the changes. Other women nodded respectfully, instead of whispering behind their hands. Children ran up to see baby James, who laughed and reached for them with chubby fingers. Even the men tipped their hats with genuine respect. At the church, Reverend Walsh met them at the door. "Catherine," he said, his voice heavy with regret, "I owe you an apology. We let our limited understanding blind us to God's greater plan." "Reverend," Catherine replied, shifting James to her other hip, "I learned something important these past months. Miracles don't always look the way we expect them to. Sometimes they come disguised as heartbreak, as loss, as being cast out from everything familiar." She looked down at James, who was trying to grab the Reverend's spectacles. "Sometimes they come as a dying girl on your doorstep, trusting you with the most precious thing she had." That evening, as they prepared to return home to Millfield, Catherine stood on the porch of her aunt's house, the same place where she had packed her few belongings for the journey north. But now she wasn't the frightened, ashamed woman who had left. She was a wife, a mother, a person who had learned that worth came from within. "Ready to go home?" Daniel asked, loading their supplies into the wagon. Catherine looked once more at Meadowbrook, the town that had shaped her but no longer defined her. "Yes," she said, climbing up beside him with James. "I'm ready." As they rode west toward the setting sun, James fell asleep in his mother's arms, dreaming whatever dreams babies dream. Behind them, the lights of Meadowbrook faded into memory. Ahead lay their cabin in the valley, their garden, their life built on the foundation of unexpected love. Catherine had learned that some gifts come wrapped in sorrow, that some families are chosen rather than born, and that sometimes the greatest miracles happen not when we get what we want, but when we learn to want what we have. The barren bride had found her miracle after all, not in changing what she couldn't control, but in embracing what she could choose. And in that choice, she had found not just a son, but a truth that would echo through generations. Love makes a family, not blood alone. As the Nebraska stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, the Cooper family rode home together, complete at last.